Hello there, Salim Omar here from the CPA Marketing Genius podcast, bringing you another amazing episode. I've got a special guest with us. His name is Spencer Carpenter. Spencer, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to provide some value to your listeners.
That's awesome. Spencer is the founder of Outlier Audio. It's a full-service podcast booking agency that represents talented entrepreneurs, business professionals, and investors, specializing in real estate investors. Prior to being in the podcast space, Spencer spent over a decade working in the music industry, taking on various roles, including talent management and representation, event and festival organizing, record label herd, and more. Spencer, I am really looking forward to picking your brain on the subject of podcasting. But before we go there, give us a quick backstory on yourself. It was quite interesting going from being in the music industry and then transitioning over to podcasting.
Yeah. So, I started booking concerts in my hometown when I was 15 because my cousins wouldn't let me into their band. And I just wanted to stay involved. And I was able to continue doing that after high school. And so scaling that up to doing multi-day music conferences and festivals and tour booking and stuff like that, I was always on both sides of talent representation. And when I started listening to podcasts myself, I recognized that a lot of the people I was listening to were providing me a ton of information, but they weren't celebrities by any means. They were just people doing what they do, real estate investors or financial planners or that sort of thing. They were just doing what is considered like their job. And then when COVID shut everything down, obviously it wasn't just that, music was shut down. It's, do I have a job when I come back? And I also recognized it was shutting down any type of conference or in-person networking or expo or something like that people use as a way to drive in new business. And so I saw podcasts as a way to help people, quote, perform while they were stuck at home. And I just decided that, if no one is going to look at entrepreneurs and investors and business professionals as talent, unless they are celebrities already like Mark Cuban or Richard Branson or something, then I want to start helping those people get booked onto podcasts more. That's pretty much what started this, is just wanting to be able to help people get their information out there to listeners. And, hopefully that then also turns into leads and sales.
Podcasting has grown quite a bit. I don't know, 15 years back, if you'd asked me, Salim, I'm going to appear on a podcast, or Salim, are you going to have your own podcast show? And I would have said, what is a podcast? And now it's like you can really learn a lot in any field, in any genre. There's like lots of good free information. Why should a professional, a CPA, somebody who owns their own firm that's looking to grow their own firm, why should they pay attention to this and even maybe consider starting their own show or appear as a guest on other people's shows?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you phrased it as both, as starting their own or appearing on others. And the reason I really like podcasting over other forms of media forms is that it's not disruptive marketing. It's not running an ad on Facebook or Instagram and then hoping to get someone's attention, keep their attention, get them to the website, then have the website hopefully convert them into making a sale or to booking a call. Because podcast interviews are one-on-one with a host, it's just a conversation. And, typically they are anywhere from 25 to 45 or 60 minutes. That's way more time than any brand is getting with a potential customer on any other platform, whether it be a commercial on TV or an ad on the radio or something like that. 25 to 45 minutes, if any brand could get that, they would pay a lot of money for that. And the whole time they're building rapport with the listener. And so because most of the time it is just based on providing information and teaching, there's no pitching going on. There's no pressure on the listener to have to convert or anything like that. So they don't have their guard up. They can just listen to the guests speak. They can hear their backstory, which usually leads into why they're actually passionate about what they do, and just get to know, you can hear their personality a little bit. You can hear if they like to joke around. You can hear if they're a little more serious, and both resonate with different people. Someone might think, I just want to work with people that are cheery and happy and funny all the time. And then others are like, no, when it comes to my money and my taxes, I want someone to be very serious. And then from the other side of things, so that's why it's great to just do interviews in general. And then you're getting to borrow from the host network of people instead of just your own. But then the flip side of hosting a podcast is that you get to control the narrative. You get to just drive where the conversation goes. You have all the control. You get to decide who's going to be the guest and whether that guest is someone that is your potential customer. So it could be a funnel, or it could be someone that works in unison with your industry. So you as a CPA, maybe you are interviewing like attorneys or insurance agents, these people that might have other leads to potential customers. And then in general, just if you're the host, I mean, how much, you are just automatically being looked at as an authority in your space. Now, being a guest can also do that. But again, if you are like the host, there's a lot of power in that. And so again, it's just one of those things where maybe podcast interviews are great because you don't have to build the infrastructure of hosting a podcast. There are companies you can hire. My company actually helps people edit and distribute their podcasts as well. But, it's a little more bit of an undertaking, but you get to brand it the way you want.
Yeah, definitely a great authority builder, a great way to differentiate a business. Because it's really the authority, the authority that comes from, being an interviewer and interviewing different guests. So just that role in itself creates the positioning of authority, which I think is really, really good. When it comes to you're hiring an expert, you want somebody who is an expert, right? Really knows, and they bring that authority. So I think that there's a lot to be said for that. And the other thing, Spencer, for myself, that what it does is it clarifies the messaging as well. When I'm interviewing someone or I'm a guest on someone, it forces me to crystallize the messaging, the things that I want to say. And that messaging can then be repurposed in so many different ways with your own existing clients. It's like we're discussing a topic and it's like, all right, that comes in and it's being able to then articulate that to the user in different formats. Yeah.
The repurposing of content and also the SEO benefits. I mean, you could hire a PR company to put out articles about you, but oftentimes those articles are going to go out to numerous media outlets, but they're all going to publish the exact same title and body. Whereas with every podcast interview, if you do 10, they all have different titles, different descriptions, and they're all unique in some way. You could have generally the same discussion over 10 interviews, but they're always going to be different. And there's just a lot of benefits once you said that. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, perhaps the next question I want to ask you, Spencer, is what are some best practices if somebody's looking to start their own show? What are a few things that you'd say for them to watch out for? And then we'll kind of do the same thing, coming in as a guest. What are some of the things, best practices to appear as a guest?
Yeah. So if you're going to be a host, just be clear on how are you monetizing it? You can always ready, fire, aim and just start doing a podcast for fun, just because you want to do it. But be clear on who it is that is going to be the customer or the listener. And so, for example, going back to who it is that you would interview if you're trying to use it as a funnel is, let's just say someone specializes in accounting services for real estate investors. Maybe the show isn't about taxes or accounting at all. Maybe it's just a show about real estate investing. And you get you do one interview a week, which is, and taking 2 off for Christmas, and you do 50 episodes a year. And that's 50 real estate investors that you just connected with that could all be potential customers, or maybe know someone that needs a professional. And so maybe specifically you're like, well, most of the more established syndicators already have their team lined up. So maybe your show is about new real estate investors. You're trying to find people that maybe only done 1 to 10 deals, specifically because they might not be paying that team yet. And so they could be your ideal client. So that's just one way to look at it. Maybe your client is more direct to consumer rather than to business professional, in which case you would have on the people that they find interesting, other experts in the industry, to have, unique conversations that are just going to be helpful to the listener. There are lots of ways to look at it, but I think looking at every interview as either a potential lead or someone that can refer you to leads is the best way to plan that out. And then in terms of best practices for being a guest, what is your angle? But it's not about you getting guests. It's what are you going to provide to the host that they haven't already heard? What's the angle that you can work, or the perspective that you can provide that they haven't heard from someone else on a show? Like, you can't pitch yourself just to speak about entrepreneurship. You can't just pitch yourself to speak about, quote, marketing. Like, everyone in every business has some perspective on that. You have to be able to differentiate yourself. And it doesn't always have to be groundbreaking material. Sometimes you just have to repurpose it. And so for an example of that is I did have a real estate investor, as a wholesaler, that was doing, a handful of deals a month. But at one point he was on vacation and he had $100,000 in wholesale fees come in. And so we crafted the topic, how to make $100,000 while on vacation. Now, he didn't do anything special. He had a good team. He just hired well and had good systems in place. But that was then the host was able to say, reinforce from previous conversations about systems and hiring well, like, this is what can happen if you set these systems up, is that the business can run without you, and it can run very well. It's not just a little bit. It can run very successfully if you set up good systems. So, maybe for someone that is in more of an accounting stance, it's looking at what type of, how you differentiate yourself as a financial professional, who it is you're focusing on and why. I have a financial planner whose parents were immigrants and had an import-export business. And when she was in college, her father got diagnosed with some sort of terminal illness, and her mom had to take care of him for 8 years, and it destroyed their business. And the business wasn't set up to be sold or to run without them. And so now she helps people set up their businesses, mom and pop shops that are using their business for retirement. She makes sure that their business is set up to be sold when it's time to retire. And her backstory there is just phenomenal. And, a lot of financial planners do very similar things, but because she focuses on this niche and is able to explain why it's passionate to her, she's able to be the person for those businesses. So that's what's important when it comes to being on a show, is making sure you know what your value proposition is, what it is you're bringing to the table that's different or unique.
And what I heard there, and I want to clarify, Spencer, is it could go beyond talking about taxes.
Absolutely.
Right? It could go beyond that. It could be other areas. It could be really client scenarios like the one you gave, a real estate investor talking about systems. It's not talking about real estate per se. It's talking about the systems behind it. So the accountant could talk about the importance of having a system for their accounting, an accounting system, a tax system, an operational system, and so forth, or hiring employees. And maybe there is, the tax angle, hiring an employee, do's and don'ts, and then bring in some of the tax elements to it. But it could be also some general information that could be useful to a business owner.
I come from every client I have, I come to them also from the angle of them as an entrepreneur. And so what you were just saying, about the systems part, maybe that's not what someone is expecting to hear about from like a CPA or financial planner. But let's just say they own their own practice. And I don't know how many clients is typical for someone that owns their own practice, but let's just say they have 150 clients. That sounds like a lot to me for someone that's on their own. But then they're able to talk about how they're able to build their practice to, manage 150 with maybe just one assistant. And that would, again, come back to the systems part. That's just going off that example. But yeah, I like to look at everybody from the perspective of like, you're also an entrepreneur. And so what is your genius in that? You're making money, you're in business, you're doing something right. So what is it? And so then if it also comes back to just they have a really unique understanding of a certain type of clientele's needs or a certain part of the tax code, that's great too. But I like to look at people from both angles.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's where the personal story comes in, right? Bring our own example of how we are doing it ourselves in our own business,
Mm-hmm.
the CPAs and entrepreneurs. So some of their own experiences and life journeys and business journey that are translatable to the listener.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very good. I'm looking at the clock and we've got a few minutes left. This has been incredible. Else, I want to ask you a couple of questions on what your journey has been like being in a podcasting agency business. Before we go there, anything else on the subject of podcasting that would be useful for the viewer, the listener?
Lots of people are wondering, they might be listening to this and say to themselves, can I be a podcast guest? And the answer is yes. As long as you have knowledge in an area that is above what the average person has, you can provide value. You don't have to be the leading expert in your field to be able to provide value to the average person. And it also, some people are like, okay, fair enough, but maybe I'm very introverted. Well, you and me right now are just having a one-on-one conversation. Most introverts can handle that. Most introverts actually like that.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't want to talk to anyone ever. It's that they don't like big interactions. And so podcasting is designed for anybody to be able to come on and speak. And so, yeah, if anyone is interested in that, like, don't hesitate. Start looking into a little bit more. Start thinking about what is it you could speak on. Maybe find a podcast that you think you'd be a fit for and reach out. Or, if you're looking for someone to help, you can always reach out to me and, I can help you get your pitch together and that sort of thing.
Yeah. It can be a lot of fun. I mean, appearing as a guest. Spencer, you're a guest on my show here. And, and really the message for the CPA listening to this is you can be a guest on other people's shows and kind of decide for yourself how often you want to be. It's once a month or once every 2 weeks. And it can be a nice change from running the business, is appearing as a guest and really being on the pedestal and coming in as an expert. It's fun. It can be fun.
And one-on-one meetings are great, but your potential is either you're going to get one customer out of it or you're going to get no customer out of it. But when it comes to podcasts, you're being able to spread your knowledge to a lot of people, especially if you do numerous podcasts. I normally get people going with 5 podcasts. And, I say to them, these podcasts have the potential to have thousands of listeners, but let's just say there's only 100. If you do 5 podcasts, you were just in front of 500 people. And if you had the opportunity to speak to a room of 500 people at some sort of conference, you would gladly do it. So why not do some podcasts? It's less pressure while getting the same result.
Totally. Awesome. Great. Let's segue into what lessons learned, perhaps with you starting your own business, 1 or 2 things that have been important for you, critical for you in creating a successful business of your own.
Yeah, well, having to learn a little bit about how taxes change a little bit when you're in your own business has been a change. I've mostly been a 1099 employee since I was 18, but I never made enough money where I actually had to pay taxes. Or I could just write off enough. And now I'm older. I'm like, I don't want to show that I make no money. I actually want to show that I make money so that I can go and buy a house, or get a new car when that time comes. So I think learning how to balance the write-off side of things while also showing you make money, but then also needing to account for the fact that you're showing you make money, you're going to have to pay taxes on that, is something that, is kind of a learning curve. And I've decided I am just not interested in learning it myself. So, I have a team that I work with. I don't like them very much, to be quite frank. So I am looking for a new accountant once my contract is up.
Right. So yeah, learning that. And I guess even recognizing that we don't have to be the expert in everything, right? I mean, that field, that's not your expertise. And, you kind of made the decision to work with someone and it's not the best relationship as you just described. And it's finding another one that is going to be the right one. Yeah, can't do everything ourselves, right? As entrepreneurs, I mean, you gotta have that right team of people. Makes such a huge difference.
Absolutely. You got to realize what you're good at and stick to that. And sometimes you can juggle a few things that you're good at or a few things you're interested in, but you just can't do it all without dropping some plates. And personally, I've just decided I'd rather just be really good at booking podcasts for clients and delivering on that front and let other people take care of the other things.
Yeah. It goes back to putting a system together, right? I mean, I think, for a business to run successfully, they need a financial system, they need a tech system, they need an operational system, they need a system on delivering the product or service to the client. Like, as much as possible, if the entrepreneur can think from a system standpoint, the better it is, because then the owner can really see, kind of get out of the business. Otherwise, they're stuck in the business. It becomes delegating becomes so difficult.
Absolutely.
Great. Spencer, this has been incredible, man. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah. So my email is just spencer@outlieraudio.com, OUTLIER audio.com. That's also our website. And we have an Instagram under Outlier Audio. And then my personal Instagram is just my name, Spencer Carpenter. And you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Great. And you can help folks, CPA listening to this, watching this. They want to appear as a guest. You can kind of have a conversation with them and point them in the right direction or help them.
Yeah. So while half of my clientele are in the real estate space, the other half of my clientele are typically people in finance. So I work with a lot of financial planners, CPAs, attorneys, and various startups, just getting them booked on interviews. And, last year I worked with, 75 clients, getting them booked on almost 450 interviews in a variety of industries. So yeah, I'd love to be able to help you get started on your first podcast or maybe continue booking people on more.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Spencer. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You take care.